Welcome to Empower Hour. Let's get growing. Good morning. How do I get rid of this? There you are. How is everybody today? It is a absolutely gorgeous October Friday. Jen Marr, Soulful Prosperity coach. Very excited to be here today. I'm talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. First, I just want to say happy birthday to all the Libras out there. It is Libra season. Both my daughters were born in October, and so was I. My birthday is Monday. October is a very special month for us. We absolutely love October. So, and I think most people on the East Coast absolutely agree. It's just spectacular time of year. I'm sitting here now with the door open and the breeze flowing, and it feels so good. So this morning we're talking about communication, and I realized with all this personal growth and development that I have been doing that most of my biggest mistakes and my biggest failures boil down to either a lack of communication or poor communication. And I guess I think of communication kind of like plugging a plug, right? You have the plug and then you have the receptacle, and you're plugging the plug into the receptacle. If you plug it in kind of not confidently, not direct, not with intention, you're not going to connect and you're not going to get that source that you need, right? Communication is only as good as the results that you get. And so when we are blaming other people for the results that we are getting out of our communication, which really boils down to the results of everything we're doing in our life, we're going to be frustrated and be spinning our wheels and not operating at our fullest potential. And I'm talking to you high, top performing people. I am not talking about, so it goes to everybody. But I almost think in some ways, so much of what entrepreneurs and business owners struggle with right now boils down to a lack of communication or poor communication. I think we are operating out of a place of fear and scarcity. I hear a lot of frustration out there today about the workforce. And I just dare you or challenge you to just take a deep look at that. Did we communicate properly when we hired our people? Did we review their job, roles, goals, all of that effectively? Make sure that they are the right person for the right seat through communicating with them what these roles are. Get their buy-in, their agreement. Because what I am seeing happen a lot, I need a sip of my tea. I'm seeing a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs being afraid to communicate with their teams because they're afraid that they're going to quit. The workforce is fragile. These are the things that I'm hearing. And so we're not doing a great job of communicating upfront, right? Articulating our values. We've talked about all this. identifying our values and then being able to articulate them clearly to everybody that comes across your path in business and in your life, and setting goals and accountability, that's all communication. And then we end up avoiding the very difficult and tough conversations as a result. And this, I can stem back, avoiding tough conversations has been for me, that for my business partnership, that was the number one reason it blew up. And I think I spent a lot of time blaming my business partner for that. But when you are in leadership and you are in any relationship and you fail to communicate, you are 50% responsible. Having the tough conversations, having that directness, right? Like putting that plug in, if you want to get that source, that power, those results that you are looking for, having tough conversations is a really big part of that. But I can tell you this, you guys, those tough conversations are never as tough as we think they are. I'm going to give you a little example. So I'm still licensed in real estate. I'm licensed with EXP, and EXP, for lack of a better term, and any of EXP people who are watching, don't get mad at me, but EXP is set up sort of like a multi-level marketing company. So whoever decides to get licensed and chooses you as a sponsor, you make a portion of their sales. And so I had a young lady join EXP this week with me as a sponsor, but I'm not practicing real estate. I'm going to be coaching her. So I called out a really good friend of mine and asked him if he was okay with, if he was looking to hire people on his team. And then I had to have the conversation, which is a conversation that I would have avoided in the past, or I would have done the people pleasing thing to avoid that difficult conversation. So here's what it is. I had the conversation was, are you okay with her being on your team, but her picking and naming me as a sponsor? And he said, yes, of course. But I know for a fact that in the past, I would have either just said, it's fine, just pick Lewis as your sponsor. I've done it before to make the other side happy. And instead of having the confidence and the clarity in my communication to be able to articulate my own needs, or would have been resentful. And so that was huge accomplishment for me. Getting over that fear and insecurity. We use or fall back to default to poor communication oftentimes when we don't have clarity ourselves, or we don't know what we want for ourselves, or we don't have the confidence in who we are to be able to communicate those needs. And I think that's cost me a lot of money over the years. Real huge eye opener. And I do believe that that was the crumble of my business partnership. Partnerships, the hardest out there. So being able to, I think the success in partnerships, in marriage, in being a leader, is being able to lead from confidence, clarity. Very, very important. The other part where communication starts to break down is distractions and not being present, not being fully present. And this is something that I have been guilty of so many times. Multitasking, not really doing a good job at deep listening. And then you end up being tone deaf as a result. And I just had an experience where I was dealing with somebody and they were completely tone deaf to everything that I said. What, they were selling, it was in a sales situation and they're trying to sell me. And like, I pretty much handed them on a silver platter all the things that are important to me, the problems and the issues that I was having, and they didn't listen. And when they presented to me, they used all the wrong terminology, or it's like they also kind of listened but got it wrong. And it was insulting. So making sure that we are not distracted and we are completely present and we are deep listening deeply is a huge part of communication. And I think that in today's world, we forget that. And we're only partially listening. And we have these amazing products and amazing services, and we're being salesy because we're not pushing ourselves to be able to communicate effectively. And a huge part of that communication is being an excellent listener. We are always listening to respond. We are listening, judging. We are listening with everything, but actually trying to investigate what the person on the other side of this conversation is, what their wants and needs are. And if we can connect to our customers, our clients, our teammates, our loved ones, wants and needs, we're going to have amazing results. That plug's going to go right into the outlet and everything is going to light up and be beautiful. Also, what gets in the way of good communication is ego. Whether it's, what are they going to think of me? Which is, I guess, a little bit of fear and insecurity. And I would say that fear and insecurity stems from ego a lot. Or just getting in our own way. Like, I shouldn't even have to have this conversation. How many times have you said that to yourself? You should already know this. I go back to, if we communicated our needs, our desires, our goals, our values, all of these things to people at the beginning of either our project or when they come on board to work with us, or when we're onboarding a client, you're going to have less of the problems where you don't have, for lack of a better term, control of a relationship. There's nothing worse than, I guess, being behind the eight ball all the time in a relationship because you did not set the expectations up correctly to begin with. Entering into a new relationship with any client, with anybody, I mean, in any scenario, without communicating and creating our boundaries, the expectations, how we're going to work together, how we're going to live together, whatever it is such a huge, important part of successful relationships. And you have to have those successful relationships in order to get the results. Or, now I'm not going to say that. You could probably get a lot of results, but it's not going to be fun. I lived it. It blew up because of the lack of communication. And then the other one is a lack of empathy, doing a lot of judging when we're speaking. I'm going to go back to saying what I said in the beginning. Our communication is only good as the results that we get. So when we are judging or we are blaming, or for example, we'll say, well, they just don't listen, they don't pay attention. It is our job as the communicator to be able to set the stage. And if this moment is not right for this communication, then to schedule when would be a good time. If there's too much emotions, too much going on, then you set, like, if they're distracted and they're doing other things, or they're just not a good listener, then you have to practice. You have to practice pacing and mirroring and then leading that conversation to where you want it to go. And too often we're just in too much of a rush to actually pay attention to our communication. And we're making everything in our life so much more difficult as a result. And that boils down to the complacency and laziness. And laziness is one of those words where everybody's afraid to call, to really call out. I honestly believe most of our shortcomings, our mistakes, our failures stem from fear and laziness, which impacts our communication and impacts our results. And not only the results, but that soulful prosperity, getting the kind of results that feel good, where you're excited to work with your team because the transparency is so good. That transparent communication, the expectations, everybody's rowing in the same direction, everybody's speaking the same language. That is success. It's not just hitting the numbers. If you're hitting the numbers and you don't want to show up, I'd rather be broke. So it changes everything. But in order to be an effective communicator, you have to really take a look at your leadership skills. How are you setting things up from A to Z? What are your processes? Have you articulated your values, your goals, and your vision to everybody that you're working with? And are you in touch and understand what's important to them? Taking the leadership to understand what the needs, the desires, that greater good thing that is driving your customers, your clients, your teammates, so that you understand that and you know what makes them tick, is a huge part of communication and going to make everything much easier. And then the last thing I'll talk about is making assumptions. And this is something that I have been very guilty of oftentimes over the years, assuming that you know what they want. So a really good habit, or assuming that you understood what they said, especially when you're not truly practiced in deep listening, which I never was my entire life. I have now been dedicating the last 6 months, and I'm going to be continuing taking several different types of courses in communication, NLP. I'm in a Buddhist communication program, reading several books on communication, because I know that I have not always been a good listener. I was in survival mode. I was listening to respond. I was listening to react. I was listening to see, out of fear, out of scarcity, out of whatever, not actually listening to the person who is communicating what their needs are, what their wants are, what their desires are, what's important to them. And so I would walk away from communications thinking I fully understood, but I wasn't really listening. So how could I? So a really good habit is to be reflecting back what has been communicated to you. And if you have some questions, you can start popping them in. But reflecting back to people. So they are talking and they're telling you either what's important to them about your product or service, or they're aggravated, agitated, and they're coming to you to tell you why. A good habit is to really listen without judgment, and then reflect back and repeat what they just said to you. I know that this is basic 101 stuff, but I encourage you to call yourself out on that. Are you actually communicating effectively? Are you actually listening deeply, listening to understand, listening to solve their problems? In Buddhism, they call it to solve their suffering. Same thing. Your clients are suffering. And if you're not listening deeply, you're going to present the wrong solution. or you're going to present the right solution in the wrong way. All right, got questions Jose brought in. So, what if I am afraid my employees will quit after a difficult conversation? Yeah, this is a big one. I hear this all the time. We're walking on eggshells. And this boils down to how you communicated. I mean, maybe not always. It doesn't always boil down to that, but it does boil down to how you communicated the onboarding of this employee. How effectively did you train them? How effectively did you articulate your values, your standards, your procedures? Are they written out clearly? So that communication of how you want things done is there and it's easy, right? Because how do we hold people accountable when we gave them a half an hour training 6 months ago and then it's been complete chaos and all kinds of stuff going on and they're not perfect? Because you're not doing your job at training, you're not doing your job at education, you're not doing your job at all of that. How can you hold somebody accountable when you haven't done your job as the leader? And that is all communication. How you are, your onboarding process, it's success in retention and recruiting, retaining, and growing talent all boils down to that communication from day one. And then if you have done your part, number one, there's going to be less and less difficult conversations that you need to have. But also, those conversations are going to go differently because you got their buy-in. They agreed to everything. You're having weekly meetings where issues and problems are being resolved. And that's the other thing, a big thing with communication with business owners and entrepreneurs. You're allowing everybody to interrupt you throughout the day. And you really can't have meaningful conversation, meaningful communication when you are multitasking. It's nearly impossible. So having set times to have meetings weekly is super important so that you can be communicating effectively and not just, frustrated, putting out fires, acting like a martyr. That's like the new role of business owners and entrepreneurs. We're martyrs. I got to do everything. What now? What now? Right. And we're being reactive. In real estate, we used to call it Pop-Tart agents, right? Just reacting to everything. We need to slow down, take the space that we need to be able to listen to what is happening. And that should not be done on the run, grabbing you when you are focusing on other things. So I hope that helped. I'm going to come back to that one. Let's see. Hello, Smriti. I hope I said your name right. What mindful practices do I suggest to be more in the moment? Well, I believe that starting, right? Not even anything to do with the conversation. I think that's what you mean in your question anyway. So my mindful practices are breath work. I do breath work before meeting with any of my clients or doing any kind of sales presentation. And I can feel the difference when I don't take, even if it's just 3 deep breaths, right? Maybe 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, max 30 seconds, 3 deep breaths. Well, sometimes I can do 3 breaths in a minute. So a minute, so that I can bring myself into my quiet space, right? And be able to truly, if you're not connected with yourself, you're not going to be able to connect with another human being. So that plug is going to plug into the outlet, but nothing's going to happen because you're not grounded. So breath work, meditation, journaling, affirmations. I tap into the highest and best version of myself every morning, no matter what. Again, even if it's just 5 minutes, because it's like this morning was not a luxurious morning. My daughter is away to have my 4-year-old granddaughter for the next 5 days, and she left at 1 o'clock in the morning, and Of course, she woke up at 1:20. So I didn't get to do all my routines, but I took my time. I did my breath work and came into this highest and best version of myself. Although I am tired, I'm still, my body's tired, but my brain and my soul and my energy is wide awake because I took that time. Really powerful stuff. And I love that, Samrati, that you asked that question, because it's not about how I am right here and now in this moment. It's all about being prepared to be the absolute best leader that you possibly can be by showing up fully, empowered, confident, clear, and consistently. People will then not be afraid to communicate with you because you are centered and grounded, not reactive. Oops, there was one more. Here it is. Okay. Yeah. What about when the other person does not listen or make eye contact? Yeah, this is hard. Like, I get so frustrated. I've been married to 2 people and I blamed them. I'm not going to lie. I blamed them, stubborn Irishmen, for the lack of communication in our marriage. I failed. I failed because I did not take the time, the space, and the mindfulness to figure out how to successfully communicate with them. Remember, the result, no, your communication is only as good as your result. And I was getting 0 results and acting kind of like a victim about it. You think about that. Like, that happens so much more with the people we are closest with. And you know what, you guys? The people on our team and even clients, like in my world, the way I work with clients, they're my family for 6 months because most of my programs are for 6 months. And so our communication tends to break down the most with the people we are the closest with. And because we're triggered, we're all of those things, right? We're triggered, we're annoyed, we're judging, right? And we judge the most when we are super close with people. So so if they're not listening or making eye contact, I think we have to kind of figure out where they are, help them get grounded, help them. One of the things I'll say is just look at me for a minute, please. Just make eye contact with me. Is now a good time for us to have a really quick conversation, which I believe is going to make our working together go so much more smoothly, or our living together, or our whatever, our weekend. I want to have a great weekend with you. So if we can take a moment, if it's not now, just let me know when so that we can get on the same page. Sound good? I don't know too many people that are going to not agree to that or not check themselves and say, I am kind of not being fair or present right now, and either take the moment and become present. And don't be afraid to even, let's take a few deep breaths. If I had brought my spirituality into my business, well, I did, but not quite to the level I do now. But we call it spirituality, but I call it basic maintenance, so I can feel amazing, feel alive, feel so energetic, is my morning routines and my evening routines. So when I'm dealing with somebody who's not listening to me and not making eye contact, I'm not taking it personal. Here's the problem. We get angry. Ugh, this jerk not even looking at me when I'm talking to him. Right? We get angry. Our communication is only as good as the result we get. Why do we care how they're acting? All we want is the result that we want. We don't want to change them or have them be a certain way or this or that. We just want to get the results that we want. And so really being in mindfulness. Love you, Jules. Communication is key. And we come from a long line of Irish people who don't want to communicate about anything. So, this was like, I'm not super formally educated. I do have a really high level of emotional intelligence, yet communication was one of my biggest weaknesses. It was so difficult having those conversations. was just, it's not in my DNA. Let's just stick our head in the sand. Right. And so again, now I have such high drive that I'm going to get the results. I'm going to get the results. It's just who I am, but it's not going to get the results in a way that is soulful prosperity, right? That feels good. And this is an amazing relationship. This is an amazing client. This is that whatever. So I think that's funny. And I think a lot of you can relate, right? That dysfunction that runs in your families of just not having difficult conversations and letting everybody, let's all get triggered and annoyed and judging. And it's just impacting the results that we wanted. We're hurting ourselves when we're judging other people and blaming them for the communication breakdown. So, yeah, I could go on. And it's like literally when I have this conversation, different pieces of the puzzle come together for me. And this common denominator of poor communication or lack of communication has been so prevalent in my life. And and I'm just really scratching the surface. So I am beyond excited for when I can get into this. Good morning, beautiful Shirley. When I can get into this space of this is flow, you guys. This is abundance, right? Feeling safe and secure in who you are. And not demanding, but it's a non-negotiable. Clear and transparent communication is a non-negotiable in my life from this point forward, period. And it feels so good. But what feels even better is that it makes me feel limitless, where I felt so limited. That is such a limited space when you're afraid to have a conversation because somebody may quit. That's not a space we want to operate and build a business from. Because even if we get the results, we're going to be resentful, exhausted, frustrated, not in a place of soulful prosperity. All right, you guys, I've got back-to-back long coaching sessions with some really cool clients today, and I haven't had a lot of sleep. So I'm going to go, and I don't think we have any more questions, but you can reach out to me at any time. If you want to dig deeper on any of this, or if there's anything that I can do to support you, grow, and be in soulful prosperity in any time, take me up on a 2-hour deep dive call. I'm operating at my highest level, tapping into more and more potential every single day, opening up more joy, more freedom, more prosperity, more abundance. And I would love to have anybody who wants to take that ride with me. Let's get on a call and see what we can do. Have a great weekend. Love you guys.